Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are live at the World of Wellness. I'm your host, Jamie Dorley, with the one and only, the co-host of the Jamie and Joe Show, Mr. Joe Messino.
Hey, we are excited for this one. 12 o'clock, the special guest. We've been telling everybody all week we got a special guest. We didn't tell them who.
It only took me 15 years to get this guy.
Aha.
He's a pioneer in the field of functional medicine, nutrition, chiropractic, diplomat in chiropractic neuropathies. I mean, you name it, he's done it. Actually, he was a speaker for my old company, Metagenics, and I love when Dr. Bob Rakowski would speak on Saturday in Orlando. We'd have Dr. Jeff Bland speaking in Atlanta, and then they flip-flop the next day, get him on the private plane, shuttle him right into the next location. And one of the attendees who loved not only Dr. Bland, but even more Dr. Bob was, of course, Dr. Weiner.
Aha.
He would travel down
perfect.
to Virginia to see these guys. How come they never come to Pittsburgh? That's what he always would say. So now in modern technology, we're here at the Wine and Wellness Week, and we have the roundtable discussion with a mentor of mine. He's always been so supportive. Even when I was a brand new rep at Metagenic, came right up to introduce himself, and his energy is contagious. So let's give a nice warm welcome to Dr. Bob Rakowski. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob.
Well, thank you. Always a joy. Thanks for the beautiful introduction. I like to say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but we've actually come to realize that a picture is worth 2 million words now with good brain scans. And so if Phil can share my screen, I like to give a little background. So this is actually my 31st year in clinical practice. First and foremost, I'm a family man. I've got a beautiful wife of 34 years, 3 wonderful children, 3 beautiful granddaughters, all happy, healthy, and thriving. I've treated world champion athletes from every major professional sport, and I've also seen people that were given a death sentence. And the reason I show that foot at the bottom is that foot was given a death sentence. They were scheduled to cut it off 2 days from the day that picture was taken, but look at it 2 weeks later and ultimately 17 months later. And here's what I tell people. If we give the body what it needs, miraculous things can happen. And one of the principles I'll discuss is that bodies respond to frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. So there I'm on stage. I've actually taught over 10,000 hours of continuing education seminars to doctors on 6 continents, just not Antarctica. But maybe we'll get that one done sometime soon. Most of us are familiar with this term functional medicine, and I really like Dr. David Perlmutter's definition of functional medicine. He says it's the opposite of dysfunctional medicine. Functional medicine goes after the cause, whereas dysfunctional medicine just tries to get people to feel better. And one thing we've known over time is that a program is only as good as its compliance. So we're going to show things that people can do that they'll enjoy doing, that they can get fast results, that they can create the health and life of their dreams. And to quote Dean Ornish, phenomenal researcher, he said, if you're going to get a change that's going to be sustainable, it absolutely has to be pleasurable. This was an article in the Archives of Internal Medicine, 1989, and they described the deadly quartet. And they said if you were obese, had high blood pressure, prediabetes or diabetes, high blood lipids, you were going to die early. But reality is they really missed it. Those are all effects of the real deadly quartet, which are stress, toxins, malnutrition, and physical inactivity. Nothing better than nutritional frontiers and functional medicine to get people through all of these issues. So we start looking at stress. This was before the pandemic. They said 3/4 of all medical visits were in some form related to stress. Those numbers might even be higher today, but stress is nothing new on the planet. And I actually think it's always been the #1 killer. So when they look at fossil remains and they looked at skulls, if the skull had evidence of grinding their teeth, the skull was estimated to have died 15.4 years earlier than people that did not grind their teeth. There's a syndrome out there. Most people know about insulin resistance, but far more common than that is cortisol resistance. And since I'm used to lecturing to doctors, anytime you want to validate what I'm saying, you just type in the little PubMed ID in your Google search and you can go right to the article. But here's what it says. It says nearly everybody walking around has cortisol resistance, or as the exact quote says, many, if not all, New World primates have elevated cortisol and cortisol resistance. I'm going to make use of this graph a couple of different ways. And what I want to show you is at rest, the liver actually gets the most blood flow, followed by the kidneys, followed by the brain. Now, the brain is the most perfused because it has a smaller volume, but look at our body's highest priority at rest. It's actually detoxification. So we're going to talk about that as well. But under a stress circumstance, you shut off the liver, you shut off the kidneys, at least about 90 to 95% reduction in efficiency, and you also change the blood flow of the brain. So this is from Daniel Amen's website. You know, he's got a TED Talk entitled What He Learned After 83,000 Brain Scans. And what we know is that stress is bad for the body, bad for the brain, bad for the immune system, and probably bad for everybody in your inner circle. And by the way, it can make you fat by a number of different mechanisms. And if we look at the term globesity, we see that this is one of the biggest problems on the planet. I love Michael Phelps as an example of success applying the principles of frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli. And when people want fast changes, we put them on nutritional programs, Michael Phelps type style, to make super fast changes. We'll talk a little bit about Ganoderma lucidum, also known as reishi, also known as ling qi. It's called the herb of spiritual potency. It's a consensus top superfood. And by three different mechanisms, it calms the body, it calms the mind, and it calms the spirit. And when we look at what we want to do for us, what I call a stress reset, this is one of the biggest slam dunks of any protocol that I've ever created. Melatonin actually prevents the stress drive on the adrenal glands. It binds to the adrenal cortex, and it calms actually both the cortex and the medulla. We've got the Calm Day supplement, which is phenomenal with theanine and GABA and other supportive nutrients, and we want to take those every waking hour. And then Ganoderma spores, and we'll show the benefits across the board. But when you give people this protocol, it's a matter of doses and they start feeling instantly better. I had a Zoom earlier this morning with a woman that had bariatric surgery, suffered profound malnutrition, was horribly inflamed, anxious, depressed. Stress reset is the first thing that we did. We enhanced her digestion, her elimination, her detoxification, her brain chemistry. And she said she got her life back in 10 days. When we start,
yeah, I mean, talked about this so many. Yeah, I mean, this is so exciting. Yeah, Joe, I got my mind spin.
First thing that someone will say, I think, when we show them the protocol is dose melatonin during the day. Isn't that a sleep nutrient? So melatonin, we know, has had lots of studies on being a powerful antioxidant. So how are we using it during every waking hour and not enacting the sleep cycle?
All right. So I'm going to explain that 35 years ago when I was in school and they studied the blood-brain barrier, they said it was to keep toxins out of the brain. But that was a very inaccurate description of why we have the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier keeps what's in the brain and what's in the body in the body. So, for example, the neurotransmitter glutamate in the central nervous system is excitatory, and at high levels, it'll actually cause a seizure. In the peripheral nervous system, glutamate is a neurotransmitter of pain, and it's actually very easy to make. The body prioritizes it in a fight or flight circumstance. So I tell people, if we didn't have the blood-brain barrier, let's say we got up in the middle of the night, walked across the room and stubbed our toe, we would have a seizure because all the glutamate rushing into the brain. So the gut makes 400 times the melatonin as the brain. That's the World Journal Gastroenterology, very easy to show that. And if it crossed the blood-brain barrier, we'd be asleep 24/7. If people feel tired on melatonin in the day, there's two reasons. They either have a leaky brain, and we need to fix that, or they're running on stress hormones. And when we pull the plug on their stress hormones, suddenly they have to realize, wait a minute, I need to make energy another way. And by the way, both of those are great things. And this protocol enhances healing of the blood-brain barrier, and it does pull the plug on the stress hormones. There's literally thousands of studies on melatonin. One of my favorites, it talks about the hallmarks of cancer. The 10 major hallmarks of cancer are all positively modulated by melatonin. It's even found in single-celled organisms, and they believe it's a universal signaling molecule in the plant and animal kingdom. Powerful stuff.
Well, that makes sense because it's also, sunlight. You know, this is what gives every living organism a chance to live on this planet, and it's related to melatonin as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dr. Bob, I remember back at your seminars, the depth of the education was fantastic. And one thing I want to ask about dosage, because I remember you had said many times that when you have a big crisis, you need big intervention. And there was a young lady, Tanisha, that had lost her legs to, I believe, diabetic neuropathies and circulation issues. And her video, man, we were all crying in the audience because they were going to cut her hands off, right? Luckily, the whole family gathered together. They weren't of big means. The whole family chipped in and went to Dr. Bob, and he saved her. So can you talk about dosage? Because a lot of people are afraid to use a high dosage, not only the patient, but the doctor is included. So can you comment on that? Because I see one dose every hour. I love it. But a lot of people are probably going, oh, come on.
Well, all one needs to do is go to the poison control database and see how many people have died from vitamins, minerals, or herbal supplementation. And in the last decade, there's exactly zero. But if you go back to the last death, it wasn't the vitamin or mineral or herbal, it was tainted, it was toxicity, it was a contaminated batch. And so these things are profoundly safe. And, people can take it very, very comfortably. If they start feeling a little odd, call their practitioner. If they need to back it off because they're detoxifying too fast, well, then we can back it off. Or maybe they have a Hersheimer reaction. And both those things can happen with this protocol.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And like I said, there was so many testimonies, but that one in particular, when you saved that young lady's hands, wow, how fulfilling and unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Every day, as I tell my colleagues, it really beats working for a living. We get to connect with people, connect them to their best self, and help them create a beautiful life in spite of all the other challenges. So you guys are awesome. If you raise a hand, say a word if ever you want to interject or ask. But when we look at our toxic world, this is one of the absolute biggest problems on the planet. 80,000 plus registered toxic chemicals. Human toxin inventory going back now 50 years, where they've taken fat biopsies from cadavers and surgical patients. Everybody walking around has at least 700 toxins in their system. Environmental work group, umbilical cord blood study, 200 toxins found in every single baby that they've looked at. And they now know that these toxins are specifically related to this autism pandemic. In 1970, the incidence was 1 in 10,000. In 2021, it's now 1 in 41 and 1 in 27 boys. And this is a crime against our children. So when we nourish these kids in a way where they can get what they need in a way that they want, they can get better. And this was an autistic child that had a dramatic turnaround by having a Ganoderma-infused hot chocolate. World Health Organization, I sometimes wonder how valid they are these days, but at one point they were respected, and they said that toxins were responsible for 25% of all global deaths. And when we look in the US, we go back to 1900, death rate from infectious disease was the absolute highest, and life expectancy was very short, 47.3 years, where this graph ends at 2009, 78.2. But if you ask, what was killing these people, we can use the Black Plague in the Middle Ages, responsible for killing 30 to 50% of the population. But quite simply, the streets were narrow and flowing with sewage. When sanitation and hygiene were terrible, people were dying from infectious disease. So there's a picture of New York City in 1881, and you may not know what the debris is in the middle of the street, but I'll kind of zap in on that. The major mode of transportation was horse and buggy, And it was estimated that the horses would drop 2.5 million pounds of manure in the streets every single day. So when Henry Ford came out with the Model T, that was really the primary advance in decline in death rate from infectious disease. And it's easy to find this death rate from infectious disease in the CDC, but you'll see that 80% of deaths at 1900 were from infectious disease. You'll see a 75% reduction in death rate before penicillin, a 91.25% reduction before broad spread vaccinations. By the way, in the 1950s, they only did about 2, 3, or 4 at the most, but no decline in death rate from infectious disease since they've started all of these vaccinations. So I'll often ask my patients, my students, my practitioners, if cleaning up the external environment led to such a dramatic increase in longevity, what will happen when we clean up our internal environment? And I come back to this: the body's highest priority at rest is detoxification, and therefore it's my highest priority clinical intervention. People are really stuck. Their physiology is just going nowhere. They're not feeling well. And I use this example. If you're stuck in the mud like this and someone comes by, gives you a little push, and you give it the gas, you're going to dig a deeper rut for yourself. So we used, again, the principles: frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli, fully knowing that detox is nutrient dependent, energy dependent, protein dependent. And I recommend 7 to 10 days of functional detox nutrients and organic vegetables twice a year. And here we're going to introduce the Power Cleanse, an absolutely powerful protocol. It's got plant-based proteins, very gentle, very easy to digest, with the added benefit of alkalizing the body as we go through. We go ahead and throw in the Ganoderma spores, the nutritional frontiers. I'll tell you what, at times I will do, probably more often than not, a stress reset and an intense detox simultaneously if people really want to push themselves forward fast. So I might pause there and see if you want to chat about detox.
Dr. Baum, I love this because, we always talk about at the Wellness Center and Nutritional Frontiers, nutritional deficiencies and toxicity, and then tying that into their genetics and what are some of the things you can do. So I love the Power Cleanse. That's something we call the Shake a Day Club. I think we saw that from Dr. Bob, of course, way back when. Hopefully he doesn't have a trademark, but we try and encourage them to get the easy to digest proteins. And in the Power Cleanse, we put in the active vitamins, the chelated minerals from Albion, and then the extra liver support. So we love that component, to hit not only phase 1 and 2, but 3 and 4. The question I have is the SPMs. We've gotten incredible results on those. What type of dosage are you recommending? I'm finding 3 to 6 for acute, but I know you probably go higher.
Jamie, I definitely do. So remember, and we're going to get to this later in the presentation, the specialized ProResolve and mediators, over 2,000 published medical studies, Nobel Prize nominated research. This is the bridge between systemic chronic inflammatory process and resolution. Without that, the sick bodies do not create the resolvins from their omega-3s. They can't make that bridge. They have this smoldering flame in their body that's sucking the life out of them. And if we don't resolve that, they're just going to be miserable, and the estimated cost globally of chronic illness by 2030 is estimated to be $47 trillion a year. And we're going to get to that as we get through the back half of the presentation. But this is absolutely one of the most powerful advances in nutritional science in my lifetime, for sure. Certainly in the last 20 years, Dr. Serhan from Harvard really pushing it forward. And you've done such a fantastic job getting the most powerful SPM that I've seen on the market. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, it's one of those examples of always keeping a good network. We had the guidance and the support of Todd Parker, one of our friends from way back when. And Todd's involved in a German pharmaceutical facility. So that's how we're able to get those concentrations where they are with the purity certification.
Yeah. I love the way you explained the whole issue of death by infectious disease, Doc, because it was plumbing that and sanitation that stopped that death rate externally. Now we have to have the plumbing and sanitation internally to stop that death rate, right?
Very well said. And Jamie, did I say that I'm doing hourly doses with this, and sometimes up to 2 every hour? You know, I mean, we've got to get these people out of trouble.
Yeah, I'll let them in here.
I love it.
I'm going to tell a
We all
story.
work-
I loved Charles Poliquin, and I traveled around the world and lectured with him and his trainers. And it was a loss when we lost him. But he would teach his trainers, if you hurt your client, you lose them. And I would go right behind him and I would say, look, if you're doing nutrition, if you don't help their client, you lose them. And so people want to be better yesterday. And once they understand that miraculous things happen in response to great supplementation, applying frequency, duration, intensity, quality, and timing of stimuli, everybody wants to get better. And we've got videos of, thousands of videos of people with near miraculous results. Our Synergist Ganoderma, great for the skin, liver, intestines, kidneys, and lung. And I want to expand on this a little bit. I first heard the case of the frozen addicts from Dr. Bland, I think in the 1990s. And this was a fascinating study. These were a group of drug abusers in Southern California who injected a synthetic heroin called MPTP. They all woke up the next day with Parkinson's disease. So when they went to the hospital, the doctors looked at them and said, well, we want some of that. They said, why the heck would you want some of that? Look what it did to us. They said, look, maybe someday we'll find a cure for Parkinson's. Well, it took them until 2018, where they actually pre-dosed animals with Ganoderma lucidum, injected them with MPTP, and they did not develop Parkinson's. So phenomenal for this horrific toxin. Also, carbon tetrachloride known to cause liver failure. Ganoderma prevents that. STZ was a type of chemotherapy that they stopped doing because it destroys the beta cells of the islets of Langerhans of the pancreas and instantly cause type 1 diabetes. Exactly. But when they give Ganoderma, that doesn't happen. Wow. And then a neural tube toxin that would cause neural tube defects in about 80% of offspring in a single dose. That was a mouse study. They wouldn't do that to humans. Pre-treatment with Ganoderma, that went down to 20%. So powerful for the liver and all across the board. Detox. And, I'm regularly recommending detox. And the hardest thing I get to pull people off of when I tried to do it decades ago was coffee. Well, about a decade ago, I said, all right, you have two choices, healthy coffee or no coffee. Well, guess what? They all take the Ganoderma or reishi infused coffee. Quick story. I saw Hannah Cohen in 2012, shortly after a 9-hour brain surgery where they couldn't get her all of her brain cancer. She was given a short time to live, put her on a detox, all of the good nutraceuticals. I wrote the foreword to her book, and we're a decade later, and she's alive and well and thriving and healthy and happy, and zero issues since that point in time.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. Congratulations. Oh, my gosh.
Well, she's an asset to our world. I love her and her husband, Pete, and what a beautiful story. So we get to malnutrition, the Global Nutrition Report. There was something else in the press 2020, but for God knows how many straight years, malnutrition is the leading cause of death on the entire planet. And every single country is affected by malnutrition. And it's simple math. The top fertilizer in the world is called NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And you go around 1940 and you realize that the global use of NPK to fertilize plants has gone up exponentially. Well, it takes 30 elements to make healthy plants, animals, and humans. And if you pull 30 out for every 3 you put back in, you're going to be in trouble. And in 2014, scientists said, maybe we have 60 years left of the earth before it's depleted beyond repair. And so we need to get proactive about what we're doing with this. I was lecturing at a conference where Barry Sears was the keynote speaker right after he had created his book, The Zone. And this is one of my favorite conference quotes of all time. He put up a copy of the USDA food pyramid, and he said, if ever there was a terrorist-like plot designed to destroy the health of the world, this would be it. So at that same conference, I created my own nutrition pyramid and life pyramid. At the base is nature's foods. If God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. Then we go to superfoods. where Ganoderma lucidum, consensus top superfood, functional foods like for detox or gut repair, a good multi-mineral, the resolvin form, PRM form of omega-3s, probiotics, D3K2. And ultimately, this is what I recommend for everybody. I cover all 7 rungs, insist that as best as they can, they eat organic, gluten-free, dairy-free. And let's, also take advantage of intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, and get people their best, beautiful, amazing lives. Any questions about anything in terms of malnutrition?
I love what you're doing here, and it's very consistent. I guess some of these ideas, I know where I got them from now, so thank you. And question on the Ganoderma. So that's the mushroom extract. I know you're going to probably get a little bit deeper. So how do you incorporate that in the capsule form? Is that something you do on a short term, or is that consistent?
And what makes it different from other mushroom extracts?
Sure, I'll get that at the end. It's the king of herbs. It's a top superfood. Paul Stamets, the world authority in medicinal mycology, wrote a book called Medical Mycology, and he showed Ganoderma just crushed the rest of the competition. We use a form where there's a couple different patented processes. It's USDA certified, organic, EcoCert, kosher, halal, processed in a GMP facility. I think some of your learners or listeners will know that that's the highest quality nutraceutical available. And 2 processes. We actually use Ganoderma infused coffee and tea because remember, sustainable changes must be pleasurable. And I'll take a little tangent here. I had a police officer come to me about a decade ago, and he was miserable. He said, "Bob, there's a lot of good in my life. I met the love of my life. I'm getting married next month." He said, "But I've got an embarrassing circumstance. I've got a horrible case of genital herpes. I take drugs to try to keep it at bay, but my job is so high stress. I just always have a breakout or another one's around the corner." He said, "Can you help?" So I put him on a huge stress reset, a detox protocol, an immune enhancing protocol, completely, put it at complete rest, had a great honeymoon, switched him over to Ganoderma infused coffee. And by the way, he was drinking 9 to 10 cups a day as a police officer. Well, like a lot of patients, the problem went away. So he stopped nearly all of his nutraceuticals after a few months, but he never stopped drinking his coffee. And he was in fairly recently. And I always like to ask him, I said, "Look, it's been a decade now. You had a problem. You remember that?" He says, "Oh, how could I forget that?" I said, "How's that going?" He says, "Bob, I think I'm cured. I have not had a single breakout since our very first visit." And so when it comes to coffee and tea, people drink it every day. They never need to be reminded. They never plan to quit. Then ours is premium, and we have something for every palate.
Yeah, it's fun to let everyone know we are introducing the organic coffee from Dr. Bob and his team. And, it tastes fantastic. You can tell just by the taste of it. No bitterness, none of that chemical from the Keurig taste. And, I love all the benefits of this. So I love what the message is. Joe, I mean, you're a coffee guy forever.
Yeah. And of course, the best way to try it is black straight, and you get it, and it's smooth. Like you said, no bitterness. And to have the added impact of the Ganoderma mushroom in here, I'm sold.
I'm going to jump into the 4th thing, which is people don't move their bodies enough or in the right way. And for most people, it's going to be pain or fatigue. Now, for elite athletes, they often don't have the nutrition, stress management, detox capacity to modulate their inflammatory process. But we've somewhat discussed this, but a lot of people don't have the energy to get off the couch. So very powerful article about systemic chronic inflammatory process. And the deadly quartet is in here: stress, toxins, malnutrition, physical inactivity as a cause here. But that ultimately leads to prediabetes, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, depression, autoimmune disease, neurodegeneration, loss of muscle and bone, and even destruction of the immune system. But what we get to then is we just throw in the SPMs, and that is the bridge to resolute that systemic chronic inflammatory process. And when we throw in good immune support, by the way, Ganoderma is really, really good for the immune system. And then we alkalize and we detox and we stress reset. I have a mindset: if someone has a pulse, they have a prayer. And with the right guidance, miracles can absolutely happen. So Ganoderma in the inflammatory process, it modulates it by at least 13 proven mechanisms, including being a really nice cyclooxygenase 2 modulator. When it comes to fatigue, it's powerful for enhancing electron transport complexes. Over 40 PubMed studies on Ganoderma and mitochondrial efficiency. It reduces the pain of fibromyalgia, a very powerful medical study. These are people that would suffer horrifically because medicine didn't have an answer, but functional medicine surely does. And this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial where Ganoderma beat the drugs for pain relief in rheumatoid arthritis. And there's some pretty elite people that said, wow, this stuff is good. I also want to partner with you guys. Ulysses and Manny Pacquiao, they both felt quite a difference in a single cup. I'll come to you for questions in just a moment. So you might ask about coffee and tea, and there's valid reasons why people should avoid coffee and tea. But amazingly, every single one of those reasons is negated, neutralized, or maybe even made a positive when Ganoderma is added. So any conversation on pain or fatigue?
Joe, I
Oh
know.
my God. So what we're doing here, from what I can see, is taking what might be viewed as a negative and turning it into a massive positive on taking the daily habits of what we do in this country especially and using it as a therapeutic. I mean, that to me is brilliant. Now, the coffee itself, and I'm going to look through this list even more detail. I always thought, Bob, that coffee had its benefits as well. Antioxidants grown in the ground, especially if it's organic. But what we do to it is what caused most of the problems. What about caffeine versus decaf?
Well, you know, caffeine actually has benefits, and there's over 60 species of plants that have caffeine, and it's a natural antimicrobial. And you're brilliant to know that even with lousy coffee, and I'll call it lousy coffee, people that drink the most live the longest. It is America's #1 source of antioxidants. There's different things in it that are great for preventing Parkinson's, preventing diabetes, enhancing fat loss, you name it. But there's a lot of people that don't handle it well. And then you start looking at coffee that has mycotoxins and then other things that they do to it after the fact. And by the way, we're going to share much, much, much healthier lattes and mochas, also with tons of Ganoderma in it, that can make a mega difference for people where that's their choice to drink.
Yeah, and I found that to be the case with some patients in the past when I was doing the consults. The one woman in particular came in, and you could just tell she had bags under her eyes. Very attractive woman. You could tell she looked like her liver was not working well. And when we dove a little deeper, she was doing 2 of the Starbucks frappe mocha lattes a day. And when I looked it up, Doc, the amount of fat was over 80 grams that she was consuming, and the sugar was through the roof. Well, there he goes. He's got it, right? And we were just talking about that this morning. We got to have the chart, and I knew, of course, you would have it. But her liver was so congested. When we removed that, and plus the cost was about $10, $12 a day, we got her off of that. In 1 month, the hair started growing back on the side of her head, and she looked 10 years younger. So this is perfect timing for this.
Well, you know, I want to tell you, I had a woman who was, that's not her picture, but it was the closest I could find on the internet, top 10 in the world of tennis for women over the age of 50. And she walked into my office drinking this big mocha with, you know, all kinds of whipped cream on top of it. And I looked at her, I said, what in the world are you doing? You know, how often do you drink that? She says, oh my gosh, I'm addicted. I drink 10 a week. And, you know, even though I purchased a pack that had a variety, including mocha in it, there's just no way I was going to sell that in my clinic. I didn't sell anything with sugar. So I looked at her, I said, would you like to try a healthier mocha? And she said, yeah, I'll try anything once. So I mixed her a mocha. I hadn't done the comparison yet. And she took 1 sip and she said, well, that can't be healthy. And I said, why do you say that? She said, it just tastes too good. And I said, well, I promise you it's better than what you're doing. So the week of Thanksgiving, she lost 4 pounds, and the only change that she made was in her mocha. And keep in mind, I introduced it to her once, and 9 years later, she's still enjoying mochas every day. Now, the company Organo is very, very smart. They know that some people are going to drink mocha. So the mocha has about 10 times the amount of Ganoderma in it that the black coffee does. Why? Because it's anti-diabetic by half a dozen mechanisms, and I'll show that. Both the latte and the hot chocolate have a lot more Ganoderma in it to buffer it. But the comparison, half the calories, 1/3 the sugar, about half the price, and a mega health advantage. 129 citations on Ganoderma and its benefits for diabetes, and it's also phenomenal for fat loss. So, people, instead of really causing themselves problems with their mocha habits, they can get better. And I'll tell another story. I was giving a very similar lecture, Functional Medicine in a Cup, for practice management guru Sachin Patel and a group of about 100 doctors in the audience. And he said, Bob, I'm a skeptic, so here's what I want to do. I want to have a volunteer from the audience put on a continuous blood glucose monitor, and we're going to give them a mocha, and we're going to see what happens to their blood sugar in the next 2 hours. Well, it was a healthy 35-year-old male, so it wasn't your typical insulin-resistant patient. But this guy, in the course of 2 hours, his blood sugar didn't even go up a point. And so just like that, all these functional medicine doctors that had been depriving themselves of mocha for God knows how long, they went to the back table and the mocha was gone within 5 minutes. And it's blood sugar friendly, but I always tell people, you know what? Test it. Test your blood sugar before, have a mocha, test it after. And even my diabetics report that it raises their blood sugar about the level of broccoli and sugar.
Is that the one you recommend for diabetics, is the latte or the mocha?
Well, no, I recommend the King of Coffee for them, or the black coffee or the green tea or the red tea or the CXT. But here's the reality. They basically, many of them are sugar addicts. And if we were to have the discussion about sugar addiction, there's a bunch of studies on Ganoderma and dopamine and being a very powerful anti-addictive mechanism. But this is what I would call a better bad choice. So what we do is, if they want to have this, I say, all right, come on into the clinic, come in the fasting state. Let's test your fasting sugar. Let's get you mocha. 45 minutes later, let's test it again. And for my typical diabetic, and in fact, even those on insulin, the mocha raises their blood sugar again on about the level of a meal of broccoli and chicken. And so this forms a much better bridge for them to make better choices, better overall glycemic control, start getting better insulin signaling, pancreatic recovery, and then ultimately develop the health that they deserve.
Don't stop. You got us.
All right. So in my clinic, what I'm finding is so many different things that are really fun for the clinic. People know when they come in, they're going to get their favorite cup of coffee or tea. So what tends to happen is they come early for their appointment. After we have a coffee bar right up front, and then people will basically, once they have one or two, they know how to make it. They know how they like it. They make themselves a coffee. They sit down. And then patients are having a conversation in the waiting area. Have you tried this yet? No, you need to. This is really, really good. Here's what I've been experienced since. So they come early. That's good for the clinic flow. They enjoy the visit more. That's good for clinic flow. Initially, when we offer them a cup, we make it exactly as they want. So, I'll ask people more often. My staff will ask them, do you like it strong, mild, or in between? And they might say, well, I like it strong. And the follow-up question is, espresso strong? And they say, yeah. Well, we open the sachet, the brewed coffee, the alkalized coffee. We put it in a nice mug, and we start out with just a little bit of water, maybe an ounce and a half. We have them take a sip. If it's too strong, we add a little more water. If it's just right, then we're good. But after they're sipping it for a while and enjoying it, we ask them, how do you like it? They usually say, wow, this is really good. And our comment is, it's really good for you too. You should get a box. And we have been selling well over $10,000 a month for about a decade at this point. And people don't ever need to be reminded to get their coffee. Simple story. We got a call on a Friday, and this has happened more than once, but someone said, hey, what time do you close? And we said 3. Why? They said, look, don't lock the doors before I get there. I need to get my coffee before the weekend. Well, I wish that would happen with fish oils, but it never has. You know, I wish it would happen with all the other nutraceuticals that are so good, but it never did. But with coffee, people won't miss it. Then, by the way, when they come in the clinic, do you need anything else while you're here? Do you need to upgrade your powders? How about your maltol? How about your SPMs? Do you want to do another stress reset? Do you want to schedule an appointment? And it's just a boom for business. I want to share this one, a powerful study, International Journal of Pharmacy. Ganoderma can completely eradicate migraines, almost no side effects in the majority of the patients. And that language is so strong that I decided to just copy that, because you almost never see that type of language. It is proved to completely eradicate migraines without side effects. So powerful there. Paul Stamets was on Joe Rogan. He talked about mushrooms curing a stutter. And he's got a TED Talk, 6 Ways That Mushrooms Will Save the World. But one of Sachin Patel's doctors, his son had a horrible stutter. It went away after 4 days of hot chocolates. And how life-changing for him. His 6 ways mushrooms will change the world: cleaning the ecosystem, natural insecticide, antiviral, antibacterial, creates healthy soil, phenomenal human nutrition, and ultimately what he missed was wealth. And I'm a big fan of Sevens. Medicinal mushrooms, a $50 billion a year global industry. A couple of Paul's books on medicinal mushrooms. And when he starts looking at who's the best mushroom out there, no one comes close to Ganoderma. This is the king of herbs, absolutely powerful, unmatched, unbeat. And that wraps up the slides, but I'm here for any and all questions.
Yeah, so there's all the options: the hot chocolate, the black coffee, the king. They all have Ganoderma in them.
Absolutely, and some have more than Ganoderma. So, for instance, the red tea has cordyceps. There's a brain drink, and I think you asked a question about it. It's actually got lion's mane, Ganoderma, cordyceps, theanine, B12, a spore probiotic, and green tea extract. So,
well, that's the exciting thing. When we looked at this product today, and your wife Kelly helped me out, I saw lactospore on the back. That's actually the probiotic that we use in our Woman's Complete, because that probiotic has been studied, of course, as a spore former, but been studied extensively on women's health, vaginitis, vaginosis, all the yeast infections they get. So I was really excited to see that, because we use a lot of the trademark ingredients. That's another example.
Well, we have great synergy. You know, I absolutely love the value you bring to the world. And this is a match made in heaven. It really is.
Yeah, I already have you on our speaking circuit. I just got to get your approval, but that's another conversation.
And on top of it, it's alkaline coffee as well, right?
That's the beautiful thing about it. Yeah. So one of the patented processes is to alkalize the coffee. And so, you look at people that have GI distress, about 80% of them have problems with coffee because of the acidity. And so when they alkalize it, there's a couple of things. It's GI friendly, but it also then even enhances the efficiency of the enzymes within the Ganoderma lucidum.
Well, I love that part, and I didn't even realize that the pH balancing, because that is one of the pushbacks you get with coffee. Yeah. It's so acidic, right? But now we know its pH balance is infused with Ganoderma, right? And I know there's always been the great antioxidants in there. So this is I love what he said earlier, Joe. It's a nice way, because either people are going to do a healthy coffee or no coffee. This gives them an option. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's usually the number one challenge. People, especially doing a cleanse or they're cleaning up their diet. And it's not even the coffee. It's all the additives. Joe goes straight black. I usually use, maybe some coconut milk, but man, all the additives, it's amazing what people put in these things. That's probably worse than any of the coffee.
Hey, Bob, how versatile are the packets? I mean, you just add hot water. That's one way. Can you put it in a espresso machine and use it like you would ground espresso?
Well, the espresso is just a water boiler. I mean, whether you're talking about a Keurig or whatever, you get hot water and you mix ours in. It doesn't matter how you boil the water. Just make sure it's good, clean water.
Yeah. All right. Enough said. All right. We have a couple questions. Yes. If you're caffeine sensitive, is there a decaffeinated option?
You know what? They had it, but it basically went away because people realized that they're okay with the caffeine in here. So when you start looking at caffeine, I tell people that
The
in my
Ganoderma
experience,
balances it.
in 10 years now, I'll tell you that 9 out of 10 people can instantly do our coffee that are caffeine sensitive without a challenge. For those that don't, I have them do a stress reset where they're doing the spores every waking hour. It balances their system a little more. And I've only seen one person in a decade that was caffeine sensitive that after a stress reset was still caffeine sensitive. So then they go with a lower caffeine option like the red tea would be really good for them. But the vast majority of people right away, they'll be able to enjoy this without issue.
Really low. We also at the Wellness Center here, we have Jeffrey Nisnik, who does the NATE, the allergy elimination technique. And he's helped people with everything from pets to mold to caffeine to food sensitivity. So you can do a session with Jeff and it would help you out a lot. I had that done twice for shellfish allergy, and I don't eat the shellfish, but never had a cross-contamination again.
Did you have a question? Did you have a hand?
Not a specific question, just that there was a chart that went by way back earlier that I couldn't read and didn't stay on long enough. And
Well, the presentation will be on our Facebook and YouTube channel.
Yeah. And I think he was showing the chart here that was illustrating all the different mushroom extracts. And the one that had the most research and the most benefit is the Ganoderma, which is in the coffees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Does the red tea have as good or better health as the coffee?
The Ganoderma?
Red tea.
The red tea?
What's the amount of red tea compared to some of the others for Ganoderma?
Well, Jamie, I've got to give you the technically, politically correct answer, and that is proprietary. So here's the deal. Organo was the first company to come out with this. So there have been copycats since, Four Sigmatic. People are coming out and saying, wow, this mushroom coffee is amazing. Let's try to copy it. Well, they can't copy the patented processes. They can't. So we have a decided edge there. But imagine if we disclose it, which we did originally. And what I'll tell you, it's a therapeutic dose and everything. And I am allowed to say this. If you take the size of the sachet, about 5% of the contents is the Ganoderma lucidum. So you realize that the hot chocolate is the biggest sachet. That has the most Ganoderma. Then you find the mochas next. Then you have the latte. And then ultimately you get the king and the black and the green tea and the red tea. But a therapeutic dose and everything. Every single tea bag, the red tea has Ganoderma and cordyceps. It makes 3 cups. And the green tea, exactly the same. And we have plenty of people, they actually brew them overnight. They cold brew them or sun brew or whatever you want to call it. And they put in, maybe half a gallon of water, a tea bag of green, a tea bag of red. And that's their water for the day. And they just feel good and smooth and nourished. And the benefits don't take long to realize. You put this in your body for a few days, and some even notice it after a single cup.
That's fantastic.
I love it. This is incredible. It's opened up so many different thoughts and opportunities here to educate people. So I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Bob. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am. She asked a question if you wanted to make it sweeter. You're sweet enough. You don't need any extra sweetener. But if you wanted to add any sweetener for diabetics, what do you recommend? Is stevia or is xylitol, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, we're going to go with a non-caloric, glycemic-friendly sweetener. But I want to say again that what we know is that Ganoderma is so good on the blood sugar regulation and diabetic by at least half a dozen mechanisms. They can, for convenience, usually start with a latte or mocha, but whatever their choice, whether they like stevia, monk fruit, some type of sugar alcohol, whatever they do well with that they enjoy, go ahead and do that. But get them on that stress reset, that detox. Let's get that pancreas working better and the cells responding better to insulin. And my typical conversation with a diabetic is, well, do you want to be diabetic? And they say no. I said, well, let's make that go away. My typical diabetic is non-diabetic in 60 days. And even the toughest cases, now we're not talking type 1, but the medical literature even has the first case of type 1 reversed. But even really tough cases, 6 to 8, 10 months, diabetes is gone, and that's with no medications.
So what do you do in those cases where you have the type 1 that they got to utilize some insulin? Are you using the same type of protocol?
Sure. So if I go back to the foot that I showed in the original picture, which it's a very gruesome foot. But I even have a video of this woman, Maureen. She, she was supposed to have her foot cut off. Medically, they were keeping her. They were happy that her sugar A1C was 7.0. And I said, my gosh, they're killing you with that. And when we got her down now, we've got her down to 5.0, and her endocrinologist is frightened. She says, you just can't be ideal at that. And she says, why not? Why can't I have ideal sugar even though I depend on insulin? And she's not having the highs and lows. She's very well regulated at 5.0. But I mean, this foot, she's only 45 years old in this picture.
Oh my God.
And, when they start that first surgery, if this was my foot, it's for easier showing. I say, here's the first surgery. Here's the second surgery. Here's the third surgery. Here's the fourth. Then they go to the other side. Then you go blind. Then your kidneys fail. Then you die. That's not the way to go. But instead, she's thriving. We fast forward and she's having her absolute best life, her best sugar, her lowest insulin, and having the life that she deserves.
Awesome.
That's incredible. That's what it's all
Great
about
stuff.
right there. I tell you what, pictures are worth 2 million words.
They sure are.
Any other
Thank
questions,
you.
folks? We got a lot of people here. Anything else? Well, thanks so much for everybody coming today. Thanks for Dr. Bob. It's fantastic. We're looking forward with the team at Nutritional Frontiers and your team down in Houston, Texas area, and the Organo team. So we got exciting things. We are 100% committed to education. We do the Wellness Weeks 5 weeks a year. That's 35 days a year with each week over 30 workshops. So thanks to Joe for orchestrating this week. Thanks to Philly Phil on the board. And then we have our VIP dinners and our professional training events. So we have to get Dr. Bob to join us live at one of our professional events. So
Absolutely.
thanks so much. We appreciate
Thanks, Doc.
you making the time. You're so generous, and we appreciate it. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Doc.
much. Have a great day, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you.